Hi, everyone. It's a little bit after 6, so I think we're going to get started. Again, I apologize about the technical issue with the link. I'm glad that it looks like over almost 45 of you did get our email with the corrected link. And we'll be sending out a recording at the end. I'm going to ask Theron to hop on and he's going to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Safer Cleaning webinar. I'm Theron Laysleeper, the Outreach Coordinator at the Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District. Tonight, presenting for you will be Cassandra Hemingway, Outreach and Education Manager, and Amanda Clement, Eco-AmeriCorps member. I'll let them introduce themselves, but first, let's give a little thanks to the USDA Rural Utilities Service grant that is providing funding for this sustainability series, including this Safer Cleaning webinar. Let's give a little background on this. This is part of our regular programming. We are always working to make sure people know how to reduce toxins and manage their waste properly. And to that end, we have HazWaste collections every year for household hazardous waste. And this is a way to reduce the need for those by reducing what we're creating in terms of that household hazardous waste. So I'll let Cassandra and Amanda take it away. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. If you have any suggestions or comments, we welcome those in the chat box.
Okay, before we get started, there's one thing I want to give credit to regarding this webinar. This webinar and a whole series of trainings around it, and the Safer Cleaning Guide that we created at the district that you'll all receive in your email in a follow-up email after we complete the webinar, was mainly created by a former employee, Charlotte Lowe. She did all of the foundational work for this. So I just want to give credit to Charlotte. You don't see her name here anywhere, and she's not presenting with us, but I would like to thank her for her work on that. She did that through an EPA Healthy Communities grant, and it developed material that we're still using years later. So that said, let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about safer cleaning, and we use the word safer instead of safe or non-toxic because right away we're acknowledging that there is some toxicity in everything, even things that may seem innocuous, like vinegar. You know, you can overdose on anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to walk through what we mean by a safe and healthy indoor environment, and what a not safe or clean, healthy indoor environment looks like in terms of the toxicity that can come from some of the materials that you can find in most households under your kitchen sink or in your bathroom or in your shed or garage. A lot of the cleaning and disinfecting chemicals have ingredients that will affect your health. So we'll go into detail about that, and then we'll talk about what we mean by cleaning and how to find those products, or how to change some of your own practices so you're using less of the toxic materials. And we do have an item here. This is a little throwback to when we used to meet in person back in the old days. We would end the webinar, I mean, at that time it was a workshop, with making a DIY household cleaner together. We won't be doing that today, but anybody who's logged on today who lives in one of our 19 member towns is eligible to get a free green cleaning kit. And we're going to send you an email after the webinar with instructions about how to get that. So what is indoor air quality? Indoor air quality refers to a few factors: temperature, humidity, ventilation, and what we're going to be focusing on today, chemical or biological contaminants. And we're mostly talking about, indoor air quality. Indoor air quality can be anywhere from 5 to 100 times more polluted than outside air. In your normal home, it's probably in the range of 5 or a little around that area. But it can be a lot higher depending on if there's a smoker in the home, if you're using a lot of chemical cleaners, if you just painted or put a polyurethane. All of those factors contribute to your indoor air quality. And any product you use anywhere in the building affects everybody in the building. We're even referring to like multi-unit housing. If you have a duplex or you're living in an apartment complex, what one person does can affect other people. And that's particularly so in school buildings, for example, and other places where multiple people gather together and there's one or person or entity doing the cleaning. The things that affect your indoor air quality are your cleaning. The main things are your cleaning products and your processes. Oh, I'm sorry. I just stepped on Amanda's toes. Amanda is supposed to be presenting this slide. I'm going to stop talking now.
That's okay, Cassandra. So as Cassandra was saying, what affects your indoor air quality is basically anything that you put into the space that you inhabit in. So cleaning products and processes. If you have pets, they could have dander that goes into the air. Any sort of fragrances. Fragrances are a big thing because there's actually over 3,000 different chemicals that can be classified as fragrances according to the International Fragrance Association. And they don't need to disclose that to you. They can just put, natural fragrance or artificial fragrance or just fragrance at the bottom. And they don't need to say what it necessarily is. So a lot of people have allergies to those fragrances or, different just sensitivities to them. And then aerosols are a big one that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But the thing about aerosols too is it's like this really light mist. So if you spray it into the air, it's going to linger there longer because the particles are really small and tiny and they kind of float in the air. So there are 7 principles to a healthy indoor environment. So you want to make sure that your space is dry and ventilated. So if you think, like I'm thinking of here in Vermont, we have a lot of really old basements and they're really kind of wet and sometimes they can be a little bit, moist down there. So like my parents they have a basement and they have a dehumidifier down there just to make sure that it stays dry and as ventilated as possible. Ventilated, open up a window if you can. We can't really do that right now. It's starting to turn into spring, but it's still a little cold to open up your windows and keep things ventilated. Maintaining your environment is really important. If you think about maybe how you have a bathroom and you've got a bit of a mold problem, if you don't get that cleaned up, that's going to stay there. It's going to linger in the air. And clean and clutter free. So if you have things all over the place and, all of your surfaces are covered with little knickknacks and things like that, decorate however you want. But if you can't get under those and clean them, there's going to be dust and things that kind of is left there and you don't clean it off, and that can linger in the air and can cause problems. Pest free. So if you have mice or cockroaches or something, stuff like that, they're droppings, and just the way that they can go around can actually spread diseases like E. coli or salmonella. Those kind of bacteria can get on surfaces, and the mouse droppings can actually get in, the fumes from them can get in the air, and they can cause all sort of problems. And then contaminants. So this is a lot of the cleaners we're going to be talking about. So there's a couple of categories of people that are a lot more sensitive to these toxins. So children are a big one. So children, their immune systems are still developing. So if they're exposed to toxins, it's going to affect them a lot more. So also they're down on the floor a lot of the times, crawling around. So if you have a new carpet that has a lot of fumes in there, or you're using a lot of products that are really, really, strong, maybe on your floor, it might end up, going from their hands to their mouth. And, we know children put everything that they can reach into their mouths. And then another category of people that are affected a lot by toxins are older adults. Because as you get older, you produce fewer immune cells and fewer white blood cells, which is why older people tend to get sick easier. And this weakens your immune system, and it means that you can be more susceptible to toxins. And also over your lifespan, toxins actually build up, and they can build up in your fat cells. And it can cause just a buildup of toxins over time. All right, and then children and toxins. So when children are exposed to toxins, there's a lot of different disorders and diseases that can be associated with them. So asthma is a big one. Cassandra's going to be talking about that a lot more later. And ADHD, it's been known to be linked to autism and cancer. So there's just a lot of different toxin kind of disorders that can be linked to toxins. We're going to talk about that more later as well. All right, and Cassandra's going to take this area.
Thanks, Amanda. Those are really, I feel like that section is really helpful just to get a sense. That's what we mean by the reason, that's sort of the why are we doing this section. There's vulnerable people, including ourselves, just plain old regular adults, but particularly children and seniors who are particularly vulnerable to some of these chemicals that we release into the air that are just everywhere and nobody thinks there's anything to worry about with them. But there are ways to know what you're looking at and how to discern if you're using a chemical cleaner that is going to be problematic or if you're not. This slide kind of popped out a little bit closer than I meant to. Well, anyhow, the first thing is I just want to talk about this study that the Environmental Working Group did. And if you're not familiar with the Environmental Working Group, it's a really great organization that studies toxins in cleaners and cosmetics and body care products. And they're pretty on top of what's happening around regulations around that kind of thing. So they did a study in 21 California schools, and they were looking at cleaners used in the schools. And in those cleaners in the 21 schools, there were 457 chemicals that were emitted into the air among all of the schools. 6 of those chemicals, 6 of them were known asthmagens. So like the name implies, an asthmagen is a chemical that can cause or exacerbate asthma. And so this is referring, and the other thing is when we say known, that means there are 6 asthmagens that are known. That doesn't mean there weren't more than 6. It's just there were only 6 that were definitively known. 11 known probable or possible cancer-causing agent, not correlated with cancer, cancer-causing agents. There were chemicals that are associated with as being endocrine disruptors, which we'll talk about later, but endocrine disruptors can affect reproduction, menstrual cycles, growth, the other toxins they found, this list down here, birth defects, polycystic ovary syndrome, and others. Those are some of the health effects that were caused by some of the chemicals found in just the plain old cleaners that they were using in these schools. This chart is my favorite part of this webinar. I don't know about favorite, but I like it because it just makes it really clear what a difference it makes if you don't even have to make any major changes in how you do things, except for when you're buying your cleaners. If you look for a third-party certified cleaner, and we'll show you what those look like soon, you can at least filter out the bad stuff, and you can focus on what is known and has been tested and verified to be safer and contain fewer or no contaminants. So in this case, they looked at Comet disinfectant powder cleaner. Notice it says disinfectant. So this might not be the same stuff you use and that you have, in your bathroom. I know Comet powder cleaner is really common. That was the main way I basically grew up. There's always a can of Comet in our bathroom. So there was 146 air contaminants in this. My guess is because it's a powder, so it's sprinkled. So, then that powder goes up into the air. The only ingredients disclosed on the label were 6 of the 146 were disclosed. And that leads us to another discussion, which is that there is no regulation or requirements around disclosing all of the ingredients in these chemical cleaners. There will be some disclosed, and you can get good information from what is disclosed, but just know that you aren't seeing even a small fraction of what is actually making up your chemical cleaners. In those 6 ingredients, 1 was an asthmagen and 7 were carcinogens. So that's Comet. a really common household cleaner. Febreze, Febreze had 89 air contaminants, only 3 ingredients and disclosed, and one of those was a carcinogen. So it doesn't seem as bad, but a carcinogen is a carcinogen. So Simple Green, that's a really interesting one, because Simple Green, by its very name, it's one of those names that makes you think that it's environmentally safe or green. It's not necessarily. I mean, I will say the color of the cleaner is green, but there's a whole lot of greenwashing in the world today. So we do encourage you to be wary. If something says it's non-toxic or green, read the label and learn a little bit more before you believe it. In this case, Simple Green, I will say, does have one product in their product line that is verified as a safer cleaning product, but most of their other products are not. And you can see here, 93 contaminants, only 1 ingredient disclosed, 3 asthmagens and 3 carcinogens. So it's not an environmentally, sustainable or safe product. Pine Sol, citrus scrub, you can see the chart. They all have either an asthmagen or carcinogen or both, except this one, Glance non-ammoniated glass and multi-purpose cleaner. This, see this down here, says Green Seal. Green Seal is one of the third-party certifiers that they have a little logo that will show up on the bottle. If you see that logo, you know that they have vetted the product and verified that it's a safer cleaning product. And if you look at the study, you can see that that bore out in the study. Only 1 air contaminant, 5 ingredients disclosed, and no asthmagens and no carcinogens. So this is why I look for third-party certifications when I buy cleaners. So let's talk about asthma. I'm pretty sure everybody on this webinar knows what asthma is, but we're just going to go into it a little bit. This statistic looks a little odd. We're quoting it exactly how it was described by the U.S. Department of Health. First, they separated children and adults, and they said 8.3% of children and 8.3% of adults have asthma. So that's 1 in 13 people in the U.S. have asthma. And asthma is an inflammatory disorder, and it basically squeezes your airways in your lungs, and it can cause wheezing, coughing, chest tightness, and trouble breathing. It's pretty serious, and it can be very dangerous. That's why we want to caution you to beware of cleaners that are known asthmagens. And this is a list of some of the top dirty dozen, if you will. And you probably won't be surprised. I mean, ammonia and bleach, of course. It's a respiratory irritant. It can cause or exacerbate asthma. Disinfectant ingredients. Now, disinfectant is not a cleaner. It's a different thing. And we'll talk about exactly what the difference is between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfectant a little later on. Quaternary ammonium compounds. So that's an ingredient that is found commonly in household wipes, sprays, and hospital disinfectants. And this is a good example of a way that you can take a little shortcut. If you're reading a label, and I'd say if you take one thing out of this webinar, please take the concept of reading labels when you buy cleaners or even personal care products. You can't, you learn so much. It takes longer. You're going to need your reading glasses. But if you see something that begins with QUAT, like quaternary ammonium compounds, that's a signal word that tells you this is very likely an asthmagen, and you might want to stay away from that item. There's a couple ingredients like that where, you can see all those ingredients that are hard to pronounce. They're like 6 syllables. Well, sometimes if you just learn the first section of that word, you can just learn to avoid that product. Fragrance ingredients. The reason why that's a vague statement is because Amanda's going to go into more detail later, but there's upwards of 3,000 potential ingredients in fragrances, and they can be very toxic to your health. That's why you run into people who are allergic to perfume or scents in any scent in any product. Volatile organic compounds. Let's talk about those for a second. Volatile, you've probably heard of VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So that's a substance that evaporates. Like Amanda was talking about aerosols. that's a great example, because when you spray an aerosol, all these tiny little particles kind of hover in the air for a while. They don't just go away. They stay in the air. And so the VOCs are often found in aerosols. Also, anything that emits a gas or a vapor after you apply it, like paint and polyurethane and that kind of thing. And disinfectants, even candles, scented candles, gasoline. So the main thing to know about VOCs is they are associated with cancer. So that's another reason to be cautious and understand what kinds of products. And if you need to, it's not to say never use any of these things, but if you, obviously most of us need gasoline, you might need paint or other products like that. At least read the label, and you'll get instructions on how to use it. And speaking of labels, this is an example of a label for an antibacterial foaming soap. I think this was like the store brand. This isn't any name brand. You can see that there's one ingredient enclosed. We assume there's quite a few more ingredients than the one, especially since that one is only 0.6% of what's in the bottle. But that ingredient is triclosan, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that right, but triclosan is one of the ingredients that are considered endocrine disrupting chemicals. So those are the chemicals that can affect hormones, growth, reproduction, and it can be found in hand sanitizer or even toothpaste. So if you look at your label and you see, it may not say triclosan, but it might be another chemical that starts with TRI or TRIC. Just like the quats, the tris or the TRIC words are, all of those are associated with endocrine disrupting chemicals. So that's another sort of code or signal word you can look for. And then here's a list of the kinds of products that that endocrine disrupting chemicals are often found in. So all-purpose cleaners, again, there's lots of those available out in the market that are certified as safer. So you don't have to not use an all-purpose cleaner. But the basic ones that haven't been vetted, yeah, they're going to be associated with that. Hand soaps, floor care products, fragrances, insect sprays. So that's a lot of things. And all I can say is read your labels. Okay, Amanda's going to talk a little more about exactly how are these chemicals getting into our bodies anyway.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about routes of exposure. So routes of exposure are how these kind of chemicals get into your body. So if you think, some of the obvious ones are if you're breathing things in, it can get into your lungs, or if you swallow or you taste something or something ends up in your mouth. Eyes and nose are a big place where toxins get in, because there's, you think about it, they're kind of a wet area and there's mucous membranes and stuff like that, then things can get trapped into. And one of the biggest ways that we don't necessarily think about is your skin. Your skin, although it seems pretty tough, is actually your largest organ in your body, and it's full of pores and all sorts of things like that, and it's really easy for things to get in there. And as Cassandra was saying a little bit earlier, this is a good area to point out personal care products, because a lot of them, much like cleaners, don't have to tell you what's in them. And this has been a big problem with like counterfeit products too, because you don't even really know where those are made. So just be really aware of what you're putting on your body and on it. All right, so health effects. So we're going to talk about the differences between acute and chronic health effects. So an acute health effect is the initial effect that you have from something that gives you a symptom. So you know where that's coming from. So I always think of, like, with these products, like an easy off oven cleaner. If you've ever sprayed one of those things without the right ventilation and without covering your mouth, you know that it will immediately choke you. And you know that it's coming from the oven cleaner. So that could be something that affects you for a little while, but it's not going to affect you forever. So acute health effects could be like a headache from like a fragrance or something like that, blurry vision, stomach aches, skin irritations, a rash if you get something on your skin. So you know where it's coming from, and it's likely not going to last forever. It could last weeks, but it's not going to last for your entire life, which is where it comes to the difference between this and chronic. So chronic health effects tend to be quite a bit more serious, and they're also a little bit different and can be really scary in a way because you don't know necessarily where that came from. So, you know, your parents could have been using some sort of cleaners for years and years and years when you were a kid, and it didn't seem to affect you. And then you get older and maybe you're trying to have a child and you can't have a child because your fertility is really decreased, or you end up with cancer eventually, and you don't know that that came from the product. It's not, you can't make that direct link. So chronic health effects are really something that you should really think about when it comes to cleaning products.
I wanted to just add a very short little example around the acute health effects, and something that happened to me. I was moving and selling a house that had some mold and mildew issues, major actually mold and mildew issues. And so we were trying to fix that. Unfortunately, we fixed it after we moved, not before. But one of the things that came up was black mold on some of the walls. And one of the areas where there was black mold was in this little laundry room that had no windows, no ventilation. And I was cleaning it with a really strong bleach solution. I now know that bleach has its place, but it really does need, it doesn't, you don't want to use a straight bleach solution or a 50-50 or anything near that. You can use a much more diluted solution and still get the same effect you want. But at the time I didn't know that, and I was using a 50-50 bleach solution and spraying it directly on the wall. It did take care of the black mold, but I was in that unventilated room for about an hour doing that. And I had the acute health effect. I was, dizzy, nauseous. I just didn't feel good. And my head was spinning. Actually felt like, like I'd purposely ingested some kind of a substance that I shouldn't have, but that actually persisted for a couple of weeks. So they're really, some of these chemicals are really intense. Okay, so that said, let's talk about cleaning. So in this section, we're going to talk about cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. And what are they? What's the difference between them? The main thing that most of us do in our houses is cleaning. And that is the real focus here. But why do we clean? The dictionary definition, if you will, is to make something free of dirt or debris, marks or mess. And typically we do that by washing or wiping. And you can do that with, like a mild soap and water. You can even do it without soap and just hot water and a cloth, and you wring it out and you wipe your counter, you wipe your stove, you wipe down your bathroom. You don't have to sanitize, you don't have to disinfect most of the time, but you do need to clean. And I just want to say, we do recognize that people are sanitizing more with COVID, but in a non-pandemic world, sanitizing isn't quite as necessary as it is now. And even now, we know that COVID is spread through breath, not through touching. So that said, what do we mean by sanitizing? Sanitizing is something we do to reduce germs. It's not cleaning. It's after cleaning or separate from cleaning. And I don't remember what the number is, if it's 90% of germs, or there's some number that we look for sanitizing. But essentially, we're doing this to make things not just free of dirt or debris, but free of germs so we're healthy. So that's appropriate for services in contact with food, or like places where children are, like, children's toys in the child care center or diaper changing station if multiple children are there, that kind of thing. Or with somebody who's like immune compromised or sick. That's where you would be sanitizing. Disinfecting is totally different. Disinfecting literally destroys like 100% of the germs, or I think it's 99.9% is the definition. that's really something you see in hospitals. It's very heavy duty. And the irony of disinfecting in a household is that you might think you're doing it to be healthier, to not spread illness, but the toxicity of the disinfectant might actually make you sick. So it's not something you really need to do in most household situations. I realize, if someone in your house has COVID, you want to be disinfecting, but typically this is something that happens at hospitals. So if you are disinfecting, and I just want to go back, so I just said this typically happens at hospitals, but it could happen if you live in a household with an immune compromised person or around infectious diseases, which we all have been hearing a lot about lately. So if you are using a disinfectant, if the product you bought states that it's a disinfectant, it's really important to read the label, because there are specific ways to use it. And if you don't use it the way the label instructs, it's not going to disinfect. So there's going to be an EPA registration number, so you can look that up and get more information that way. It's going to have information about how to use the product, the health hazards, first aid instructions, and how to store and dispose of it. But one of the main things that you should know if you are disinfecting is that disinfectants need to sit on a surface while it's wet for a certain period of time. That's called a dwell time. The CDC actually put out on its website, when COVID was really raging in the beginning stages of the pandemic, last March, April, the CDC put out how to make your own sanitizer. I think it was a disinfectant actually, but it was actually really simple. You could make it with 1/3 cup of bleach mixed with 1 gallon of water. And that's what I mean about bleach is so overused. People think if you don't smell bleach, it's not clean. That's not true. The smell of clean is nothing. There's no smell. That's what clean is. The smell of bleach is the smell of a toxic chemical. However, it has its uses, and it's very useful for sanitizing and disinfecting. So if you do make this solution, you need to spray it on, and then it has to sit for a minute wet before you wipe it off. If you don't give it the dwell time, it's not doing what you want to do. You're basically just cleaning with a disinfectant. So this whole chart was put together with childcare centers in mind, because when Charlotte first developed this webinar, it was for childcare centers and senior centers, places where, for example, somebody might have to be disinfecting between changing diapers for a large group of children. So we would recommend the lowest possible dwell time, because we know if you have a disinfectant that requires a 10-minute dwell time, nobody's going to actually follow that direction, and it won't do what it's supposed to do. So we would recommend a dwell time somewhere between 1 to 2 minutes. And that bleach solution is a really good way to do that. You can also, there's hydrogen peroxide based disinfectants that you can use that are a lot safer. And we'll give you some examples of those in a minute. I'm going to let Amanda's going to hop on and talk about other ways to, I just got totally lost what I was saying. I'm not even going to pretend to make it up. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hey, so we're going to talk about signal words. So signal words are a really good way to kind of give you an indicator of how dangerous that product that you're going to be using is without reading the entire label. Of course, you should be reading the label as much as you can. We just talked about that. But if you are trying to grab something quickly and you don't quite understand the language yet, this is a good indicator that you can use. So these signal words essentially tell you how much toxicity is in it in a roundabout way. So if it says that it's a poison, it means it's really, really toxic. It's a poison. If it says that if there says danger or warning on it, that could indicate that it's pretty toxic. And you should really read the label on those. But the best option when you're looking for signal words of something that's going to be your safer bet is caution. And that's the best choice that you should use. So you can be cautious of it. There might be something toxic in it, but it's the best choice. So, and then we're going to talk about equipment you need to be stay safe. So on the back of most products, or pretty much any product that you would use that you should be protecting yourself from. It should say on the back of it, wear eye protectant, use a mask, only spray in a well ventilated area, don't get in contact with your skin and that kind of things. And sometimes we kind of gloss over those. We go, oh, I'll be all right. But it's really, a lot of these products, as we've been talking about, can really cause some really irreversible damage. I mean, they could give you chemical burns or damage your tissue. And so you should be protecting yourself. So I think of like when we have the household hazardous waste events, the people that we get to come there actually wear these full suits that cover all of their skin. A lot of times they wear a respirator so that they can stay safe when they're having to be in contact with some of these chemicals. So you should be putting on gloves if you need to protect your skin, goggles, aprons if it's something really toxic, and masks. So protect yourself so that you don't have consequences later. And then identifying safer, cleaner products. So a good way to tell if a product is a little bit safer is how much they disclosed, how transparent are they being with you. So as Cassandra showed you earlier with the soap, there was one ingredient on there and it said the one active ingredient, and it was only 0.6% of the product. So that means that there's a lot else in there that you don't know what that is. So if they are telling you a bunch of different ingredients in the product, or maybe they'll have, these are a couple active ingredients, these are all the inactive ingredients. Unless it's a product that really doesn't have very much in it, it's good to see a pretty decent list of ingredients on there, because they're not required to disclose all the ingredients that are on that bottle. Again, try to avoid aerosols as much as possible. They have a lot of problems. If you need a spray, try to use one with a pump instead. Overwhelming chemical odors or added fragrance. I mean, a chemical odor is kind of a sign that it's dangerous. And then a lot of times companies actually add fragrance to cover up that chemical odor. So they'll add like the scent of fresh lemon or, clean linens or something like that to try to cover up that chemical odor. So you're going to not be as afraid to use it. But that fragrance can actually harm you as well. And then third-party certifications, Cassandra's going to talk about that a little bit more, but these can kind of vet the companies and kind of go in there and get the data and all that and see how well they're doing. And then again, reiterate the signal that you want to look for is caution when you're looking for a safer product.
Okay, so those third-party certified products, to me, that's like the magic button. if I'm grocery shopping, or I'm not always going to be able to read the small print on the back of the label. So if I'm buying something, I'm not going to make a DIY. I'm going to buy a product. I'm going to look for one of these labels, and that to me is enough. And also between that and checking the signal words, the poison, danger, caution, warning, between those two, you can get a safer product into your hands without having to read a whole label. So the safer choice is a third-party certification through the EPA. Eco logo and Green Seal are equally as good in terms of, any one of these three labels are going to give you the information you need. And the good news is, not that long ago, it wasn't really easy to necessarily find these ingredients in mainstream, grocery stores and hardware stores. Now, pretty much every time I shop, I see one or two products that have those logos. It's not necessarily equal to the ones that don't, but there seems to always be some option. So I think consumers have demanded it enough that we're seeing more and more of that. And the more you buy of that, the more you're going to see of it on the shelves too. I encourage you to, you will get a recording of the webinar. You'll get a follow-up email. In the follow-up email, you'll have our safer cleaning guide. And we have each one of these labels, an image of it, and a little bit more information about the organization and the website where you can learn more. So I encourage you to check out that safer cleaning guide and look at those, that specific page. The guide is also going to have things like DIY, some do-it-yourself cleaner recipes. And this is actually where we, right, perfect timing for this slide. We don't go into do-it-yourself cleaning recipes in this webinar at this point. Again, we used to do that when we did it in person. But I will say that if you have vinegar, baking soda, hydrogen peroxide in your home, you pretty much have all you need for an all-purpose cleaners. Hydrogen peroxide is a great bleach alternative, and it has hydrogen peroxide based cleaners can replace bleach as a disinfectant. So it's really a powerful tool in terms of safer cleaning products in your home. It's inexpensive. You can buy them in like quart jar sizes at most drugstores and grocery stores now. I keep a couple in my laundry room because I use them for stain removal, especially, anything that's like a bodily fluid. The hydrogen peroxide is a really good cleaner for that. Vinegar and baking soda, probably everybody's heard of that by now. You can clean almost anything with vinegar and baking soda. One of my favorite cleaning hacks for toilet cleaning is I just sprinkle in what amount, I don't measure it, but it probably amounts to about a half a cup or so of baking soda, and pour in about an equal amount, maybe a little more vinegar into the toilet. And then I just let it sit for like 10 minutes. Often just the process, the interaction of the baking soda and the vinegar will be enough that it's actually already started cleaning without me having to scrub. If you let it sit overnight, it might clean it without you scrubbing at all. But it certainly makes when you do scrub, a lot easier. So I would just stock up on those things and make that part of your regular shopping list when you're replenishing, food in your pantry. Make sure you have all of those ingredients for home cleaning too. That's the least expensive, least toxic way to get your basic household cleaning done. Also, just following up on all of the recommendations before, don't forget to look for those third-party certifications if you're going to buy a pre-made cleaner, and look to see how much is the product revealing of the ingredients. If you see one or two items and nothing else, you know that they're hiding a lot more ingredients that just aren't showing up on the label. At the bottom of this slide where it says sanitizer and disinfectant, this is a list of some products that are really great alternatives and have been vetted. So some of these you might not find like in a common, you may or may not find these at hardware stores or other places where you buy your cleaners, but you can certainly find them online. Sanidate, Oxyver, Pure Tab, and Brew Tab. And we use the Brew Tabs in our events kit. The Solid Waste District has about 250 place settings for small events. And those are reusable dishes, silverware, or flatware, I guess you should call it, linens, cloth napkins, and a few other things like that, glasses and mugs. And we've closed the program down during the pandemic, but when it opens back up, we have a small rental fee. It's very low, like people choose what they want to pay, between $15 to $75. And we include with that like those gray dish bust pans and brew taps, so that they can sanitize the dishes before they return them. And it's a really simple process. They're great. I love them. And you only need like one, and it will sanitize like 100 dishes. And for disinfectants, hydrogen peroxide is magic. It was a big mind blown for me when I found out that you could replace bleach with hydrogen peroxide. That's like, if you can do that, why wouldn't you, right? And then there's also a product called Oxyver. That's also a disinfectant alternative that is a safer one. The other thing I want to mention before we're finished with the presentation and ready to open up for questions is there are some basic things you can do in your household to improve air quality too. The big one is plants. Even if you aren't somebody who's, has a green thumb, or you tell yourself you don't have a green thumb, or you can still, there are some really easy plants like ivies and spider plants and a couple others that are pretty hard to kill, and they will purify the air and filter the air for you. You can also, one thing we don't have on this list that we should, is you can buy air filters. I highly recommend that you should have one in your home, even if you don't have mold or mildew. I got one because I had a damp basement, and I just wanted, in addition to the dehumidifiers, I needed to keep the air filtered just for my own allergies, but we actually have we have a couple on every floor in the household now, and they have HEPA filters. They filter out all kinds of contaminants. There is an upfront expense and a maintenance expense in terms of replacing the filters, but especially with COVID happening, it's a really good idea to have an air filter if you can afford it. This list of resources, we're not going to go through it here, and you will get the recording of the webinar, but you'll see these also in your follow-up email in that safer cleaning guide. So a lot of this has informed the webinar that you saw today as well. So I'm gonna ask Amanda and Theron to hop back on and find out if we have any questions.
Hi, folks. We did have a couple of questions come in. Let's start. Somebody was asking, when talking about labels, why not mention MSD sheets? So I believe they're talking about the safety data sheets for different chemicals.
Absolutely. That was a really good point. Yeah, we call those safety data sheets. They might be the same thing that yeah. And we should have mentioned those. That's a good catch. I will probably update the webinar because you can find those online. In fact, when we first started this program, that was one of the services we offered when we were working with child care centers and senior centers, is we would go in and look at every single item. It was a huge thing. I remember going through this child care center and we looked at everything. They had a closet filled with stuff that nobody had looked at in probably 30 years. And we went through every item and we got a safety data sheet on every item. And those are really good to have because they tell you what to do if you have a problem, if you get harmed by the chemical in any way or any kind of an issue comes up, your safety data sheet is going to tell you what to do about it. So I apologize that we didn't include that. That was a really good catch.
They also talk about proper safety precautions and disposal. So that's helpful information to have as well. The next question we have, regarding pests, we get cluster flies in the house, particularly in the spring. Can you suggest how to control them?
I'm going to take a stab at it. I really want to hear what you guys say. My favorite way to handle cluster flies is a good old fashioned vacuum.
Yeah, hoover them up.
Yeah, it's so satisfying. It's like, thunk, 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 thunk. There's also, there are these really neat fly strips you can get that they sit flat on the window. And I lived in a house that had really bad cluster flies, and we would put these, they're about like 2 inches by 6 inches. You might be familiar with them. And the adhesive just lays them flat so they look like part of the window, and they get covered just black with flies. The flies are, knocking into the windows and they just knock into that thing. What about?
Or if you like plants, you could get a carnivorous plant, like a pitcher plant or a Venus flytrap, and then they'd eat some of the flies for you.
I like that.
And maybe purify the air while they're at it.
Yeah. I'm not purposely not suggesting. I mean, you could call an exterminator. I'm not really familiar with, like the exterminators that use IPM, integrated pest management, which might be a less toxic option. But I think if you did call an exterminator, you would have some kind of a pesticide in your home.
The other thing you could do is, I believe, like Cassandra mentioned, there's those sticky traps. I don't think they're toxic, but if you have some sort of, if you can find a trap that's just like basically glue that they get stuck to, and then you throw it away, should be pretty non-toxic. Okay, next question. What do we have to look for in products outside of your country? What are common dangerous ingredients?
Outside, so there's somebody who's not.
This must be somebody who's tuning in from another country. I wanted to bring up that little list of products or chemicals to avoid. That's something that we put together with as part of the Don't Flush That webinar, and we could send that out as a resource for people. Okay, great. Thanks, Theron. Another good catch. I'm getting some great, input for improving this presentation. So Theron's going to send out that follow-up email, and he'll include that list for you. Okay.
Awesome.
Next question. What do you recommend for windows cleaners? Anything specific you already use which you like?
You want to take that one, Amanda?
I mean, I've washed them with just like vinegar before.
That's what I was thinking too. You can wash your windows with a straight up vinegar or a mixture of vinegar and water.
Yeah, you can also buy like these microfiber cloths that'll clean them pretty well.
That's what I was going to say. For windows and glass, I found that those cloths work really well with just water. And it's, mostly it's about streaking, which in my experience comes from using the wrong material to clean them with. So if you have the right cleaning cloths, you should be able to do it with just water.
And I think the product you're referring to is specifically from a company called E-Cloth, and they have a it's not just microfiber; it's a little bit more technical kind of fabric, and then you can after you wash with it, there's a second cloth that's basically just some kind of nylon polyester cloth that you use to kind of like take off any streaks that might have happened.
Okay, next question. How do you make DIY detergent for washing clothes?
I mean, depends on what you mean by make. I know Amanda has a great option. I'm gonna let her take this one, and I'll tell you about my less great option after Amanda goes.
So, just so you know, there are a lot of low waste and fairly natural options for clothes soap out there. It's not DIY, but you can use soap nuts, which is like essentially just like the casing of a berry. I found an enormous box of them online for like $20, and you can use them like 5 times over. And this box is probably gonna last me like a year or more. And there's subscriptions of little like drops, little like laundry packs that you can buy. There's sheets. There's a lot of options out there if you look out there. But if you want to talk about making it, Cassandra, you can.
Yeah, I got this recipe that I made for years, and it isn't exactly making because you have to buy all the things that go in it, but it was sort of equal parts. Yeah, I don't know if anybody has heard of, there's this really neat laundry soap bar that is available in almost every place that sells laundry soaps. It's called Fells Naphtha.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like an old school, like, your grandparents might have used it.
Grandmother used it.
Yeah, it's really amazing though. It's like a really great cleaner. So you get a Fells Naphtha bar, borax, and some people don't use borax, so that might be problematic, but and washing soda, which is basically typically it's Arm & Hammer sells it. It's not baking soda, but it's really close. So I would actually ran the Fells Naphtha bar. It's about maybe 4 or 5 inches by 1 inch. I would actually put it in the grating setting on my food processor. You could grate it by hand, and then mixed it with 1 box of borax and 1 box of the washing soda. And it was amazing. Like it dealt with stains. I didn't have to use stain remover. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one other ingredient, OxyClean, like the OxyClean powder. So again, that's not exactly DIY. It's more like you're making your own mix, but it was really powerful. The only reason I don't use it anymore is because I have a different system now. I have a subscription for this company called Drops that Amanda just talked about. And I really like it because it's a pretty non-toxic soap, and you only need about this 1 little pod, which is about a tablespoon. So it's very cost effective. But yeah, there are DIY recipes all over the internet too.
The other thing I want to add to that is, if you're looking for a less toxic laundry detergent, just go for something that doesn't have any fragrances and doesn't have any perfumes in it, and that'll cut down a lot just to start out.
Absolutely. And then just to add, now I'm like nerding out on laundry detergent right now. But the other thing I'd say is you're better off with a powder than a liquid. I mean, depending on if you have really hard water, that's a little different. But liquid laundry detergents you're literally buying water. It's like they've mixed water in with the soap. That's why it's a liquid.
Okay. Let's see. There's a question. What is black mold? How do you recognize it and how do you treat it?
Well, you recognize it because it's literally black. And I don't know the chemical makeup of black mold, but I know if you have it, you're going to get sick. And I have lifelong permanent allergies now because I lived in a house with black mold. And really, it's literally, it looks like a little, it's not fuzzy like blue molds. It's just kind of like, it almost looks like somebody just patted on like black paint, and it usually shows up in little sections. It's typically will show up on like sheetrock, or yeah, mostly I've seen it on walls, but it can go on anything, I guess, where you have a lot of moisture in a house. And usually you can, if you have that kind of dampness in your home, you smell it and you know it's there. So you should be looking for black mold. When we addressed that black mold problem, we had a contractor who actually cut out like the bottom couple feet of the sheetrock in the area where it was really bad. And it turned out that all of the 2x4 framing was saturated and wet. And so there was constant dampness that never went away. So, you know, you'll know you, and then the only other thing I want to say about black mold is I lived in a house where I had nonstop allergies, and I didn't realize until I moved that the window frames in the bathroom and in a skylight that was right above my bed were covered in black mold, and those were constantly moist. It wasn't a good fit. They weren't sealed properly, and there was moisture coming in from the outside. So anywhere where you think you have moisture, look for that color black. It's just going to look like black streaking or a little black paint or something, and it's toxic. So you want to get rid of it.
Okay. Karen wants to know, what do you suggest for controlling mosquitoes in the yard?
What do you guys say to that?
Well, I would say look into integrated pest management and think about the conditions that mosquitoes thrive in and try to address those. So they like, standing water. They like things that they can perch underneath, like decks. So if you can control those areas and mitigate those, that's probably the best method. But you could also reach out to some kind of landscaping consultant or something.
I believe there's also, don't quote me on this, but I think there is some citruses that they really just hate. But I mean, my parents always used like the citronella candles. I do not know how safe those are. So, but yeah.
Yeah, they don't like smoke. If you want to hang out in your yard and there's a lot of mosquitoes, I can't claim to know, the ingredients, but there is it almost looks like an incense burner. I think it is a pesticide. So maybe this isn't something I should recommend here, but it really does help keep the insects away. And it's something you can buy over the counter. It's less toxic than spraying an aerosol or putting like a pesticide on your skin to keep insects away. And it does work. So you might need to burn a couple of them, and it creates like this incense-like smoke. And then I use those like if I have cookouts in the summer or something.
More campfires. Try that.
Or you could get a pet chameleon to keep on your shoulder.
Yeah, I was thinking the other thing you could do for sort of a long-term plan is, and depends on your yard and what kind of space you have, but doing some plantings that encourage birds that eat insects. I mean, that's not going to eliminate the mosquitoes, but it will really help.
The other thing that I know about, like a non-toxic or do-it-yourself mosquito repellent, you can make birch tar and
Wow.
rub it on. It's like a Siberian thing. They heat up birch tar or birch bark in like a can and let the tar drip down. I think they mix it with some alcohol, and then it's like It's like a insect repellent. I'm sure it
Wow.
smells terrible, but apparently it works. The next thing is more of a comment. Somebody says newspapers work well for window cleaners.
Yeah, I learned that one from my grandpa.
Yep. Okay, next one. So many do-it-yourself solutions call for a few drops of Dawn dish soap. Do you know anything bad about Dawn?
I don't. Do you?
I don't. What I would suggest is, if you're curious if something has bad effects, look it up on the EWG website. The Environmental Working Group has a lot of information about all kinds of different products. You can search products on their website and they'll tell you everything that's in it and any possible health concerns that might be associated with those chemicals. It's got a lot of great information, so I'd recommend that. Somebody else is asking, do you have a good tip for washing dishes?
Teach your kids how to do it. Sorry. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe we should ask for elaboration on what they mean by that.
I would suggest, similar to a lot of our other recommendations, avoid fragrances and perfumes. Look for a dish soap that doesn't have a lot of additional stuff in it that you don't recognize. Read the label, and if it's got all kinds of chemicals that you don't understand, either look them up or pick something else.
And there are actually quite a few of those third-party certified dish soaps out there too.
Mm-hmm. All right, there's a lot of questions coming in. Okay, any suggestions for soap scum on tile and or shower glass?
We do have some recipes in the Safer Cleaning Guide that are a little bit more abrasive. Anytime I did have, I don't know about glass, but like in my shower, I have a stand-up shower unit and it's really hard to clean it. And even tried the chemical cleaners that are so bad, they didn't even work. But what did work was baking soda and vinegar. And I think it's because that baking soda is a little abrasive.
Yeah, agreed. That and like a really heavy duty scrub brush. I found that effective. What DIY solution do you have that you can clean the oven with?
The same. Baking soda and vinegar. That baking soda is like magic.
The other thing that some ovens have, they have like a self-cleaning feature. You can also put like a baking tray with some water in the oven and turn it up really hot for a while. And that steam will help to loosen some of the debris and stuff that's caked on there. And then you can scrub it with the baking soda and vinegar.
I'm not sure if this is something you want to do, but most ovens come with a self-cleaning setting. I realize that uses a lot of energy, heats your oven up to like 500 degrees or something, maybe even higher than that. But that is one way to just not use chemicals at all and just do it just basically is ultra high heat and it turns all that gunk on the side of the oven into ashes. And then all you have to do is wipe those down with water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a couple other questions and a couple more suggestions. One, how is mildew different from black mold?
That's a good question. I'm not sure of the answer, to be frank. I mean, black mold is very specific. It's something you can see. It's literally a black substance on your wall. Do you have the answer to that, Theron?
I don't, but I could just, I mean, black mold is going to be a different species than mildew. They're different kinds of fungus, I imagine. Mildew is the kind of stuff that you see if you say leave your towels or your clothing in the wet laundry machine for too long. But black mold is something that's more of a persistent mold that builds up, like you said, in damp areas, like on shower walls that get wet or stay wet. But you can definitely look that up, and that's not really where our area of expertise lies. Somebody else was suggesting bug zappers for mosquito control.
Yeah.
Somebody else suggests putting up birdhouses for swallows to eat the mosquitoes. And I know that bats eat a lot of mosquitoes. So I think, you could put up bat houses. It's basically a birdhouse with a hole on the bottom.
I just put up a bat house. It was too late in the year to do anything for this year, but I put it up in the fall. And did I say a birdhouse? I meant to say a bat house.
No, I think you said
You
birdhouse.
said a bat house.
Oh, good. I'm so excited about my bat house. Hopefully the bats know to come. I don't know how they know.
You paint a bat on it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, shine the bat light. Any experience with dryer balls? Do they work to reduce static? Trying to get rid of dryer sheets.
Yep. They also use tennis balls.
Yep. Okay. So let's see. Any suggestions on how to clean shower curtains?
I come across that sometimes. I clean mine. It's a pain, a major pain. And I'll be honest, I use a bleach solution. But the other thing I found is that I have to take it down, spread it out in the yard and scrub it from there. And then I also run it through my washing machine, because that stuff, that white weird looking stuff that ends up on the curtain, that is, I'm not even sure what that is, but sometimes black mold will start to show up on those shower curtains. So to me, that's like an air quality issue, to keep those clean. So I do clean them a few times a year, and I just, a little bit of elbow grease, a diluted, I think you probably, if you were really ambitious and you spread it out, if you had an outdoor space, you could probably go at it with baking soda and vinegar and a scrub brush. But I would still rinse it off with a hose or run it through your washing machine.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that you might see is some mineral deposits, especially in places with hard water. Those will build up, and I believe baking soda and vinegar will also help address those. Okay, there's one more question here in the comments. What do you think about Listerine for use on mold and for disinfecting your mouth and tick bites? It's in my homeopathic remedies book.
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. Well, I would suggest, again, to go check out the EWG website, the Environmental Working Group, and look it up and see, is there anything in there that you might need to worry about? They would have that information. Okay, well, that's all. That's all the questions. We've got a couple more comments coming in, and a lot of people are thanking us for the information. But I think we can wrap it up here. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar, as well as some additional resources, including a list of chemicals that are common in household cleaners that you can try to avoid and look for in your shopping. And we'll also send out the website for the Environmental Working Group and a couple other places that have those third-party certifications that review these kinds of household products.
And let's not forget that if you live in the central Vermont area and you're in one of our 19 member towns, and you also fill out our follow-up survey, which Zoom will send you at the end of the webinar, and we're going to send you, then you can get a free green cleaning kit. And all you got to do is fill out the survey, and we'll contact you after that. All right. Thanks everybody.